All right, so well, let's go ahead and make a new workbook. Do you want to save this? Don't save this. And so blank workbook. All right, so now what we're really talking about today is we're talking about the process of recording something complex and then going and looking at the code and editing it. Last time we recorded a macro, we recorded something really simple, didn't we? I mean, just like put a header on and change some color. It was really simple. In fact, it was so simple, it didn't require any editing. We recorded it and it was ready to go. But the truth is, that's the exception. For you to be able to record a macro and have it just be ready is unusual. Typically, you've got to record and then you've got to do some editing. And it's for a couple of reasons. Number one, you might do something wrong. So you got to go undo what you did and fix it. The other thing is that sometimes there are things that you want to do that the macro recorder just doesn't know how to record. The macro recorder is really pretty good. But I remember when Excel 2007 came around, I thought, oh, let's go ahead and see how these charts get recorded. You know, so I recorded myself making a chart, and the macro recorder just didn't record anything. It was just, we don't know how to record charts yet. So sometimes, the macro recorder isn't 100%. And sometimes the macro recorder is just wrong. We'll see that today. It will record something that is just an error. And that's very, very unusual. And unfortunately, this one has been around with us since 2013. It used to record what we're doing today just fine. And then in 2013, here's a new error. No idea what they were trying to do or why they changed it. Now, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to make I've got a new sheet here. I'm going to call this sheet tickers, T-I-C-K-E-R-S. And here's the idea. I'm going to have a list of ticker symbols. So maybe I'll call it symbol here, S-Y-M-B-O-L. And I'm going to want to know the price earnings ratio. So the P/E ratio. And I want the earnings per share for some arbitrary set of tickers. I'll do my favorite ticker, Southwest Airlines, feel the love, and put some others in here. Google, Apple, who else do we have? Microsoft, Dollar General. I was so surprised to find out Dollar General is like publicly traded and huge. Big company. Who else do we have? I guess ExxonMobil, XOM, American Express, AXP, I don't know, Ford, GM, that's enough. We've got 9 ticker symbols here, but imagine it was 900, And so, and just maybe for whatever reason, every day we got to go and get this information. Now, it's the year 2020, and it seems strange to think that we might actually hire a human to do this. Let me tell you a story that one of my former students told me, it was probably about 3 years ago or so. From time to time, I will have a student that comes back after their internship. So, Professor Allen, I wanted to tell you what I did on my internship, because I used VBA. I'll say, great, come in, have a seat. And I said, well, where was your internship? He said, Amazon. No, this will be interesting. I wonder what he did. And it turns out that he actually did what we're doing today in class, is that, at Amazon, he wrote a program to go and collect information off of other websites. And I thought, surely this guy's telling me a fib. This doesn't make any sense, because if you think about the companies that must really have a high competency of looking at other websites and figuring out what people are selling and how much they're selling it for, who do you think's at the top of the heap? And if Amazon's not the top, they're in the top 3. They got to be excellent at this. And I looked at him skeptically. I looked at him askance, and I said, surely you're making this up. And then he told me this. He told me something I never knew before. So it turns out that most of the things when you compete online, you're competing on price. There's some other things you can compete on, but price is a big thing. And so although Amazon doesn't necessarily always want to be the low price, they want to make sure they're within a margin, because they know there's a great convenience for people that are on Amazon, and they're not going to go to a competitor for 0.5% difference, typically. And so, but they do need to make sure that they're competitive. So, but there's a class of products they're not allowed to adjust the price on. That is, at least there's a floor, and you don't compete on price. And that's the high-end digital camera market. So if you're selling kind of the upper-end Nikon cameras, Nikon says, we'll be glad to let you sell these. You can be a distributor for us, but you have to agree not to sell this model below this amount and this model below this amount. And so, we're not going to let you cut it down to where you're on razor-thin margins. You've got to, we're maintaining the market. We're setting where we want this market to be. Seems a little bit strange in in a place where a country where we think things should be competitive, but that's the way it is. And I guess it still is competitive because you don't have to buy the Nikon, you could buy the Canon, thank you. I don't know, Nikon's the only one that comes to mind. Okay, so you buy the Canon, so there's still competition there. But, so if you can't compete on price, how are you gonna compete? Put yourself in that situation. How are you gonna compete against other people that are trying to sell the Nikon, whatever? What are you gonna do to compete? How are you gonna differentiate yourself? You guys are smart. I bet you can come up with something, and that's probably what they do. Oh, you can post it a lot of times. Make it so everyone can find it. That's not what it is. Bundle it. Yeah, that's it. So listen, you're telling me I can't sell this for below $1,200. Okay, but there's nothing that says I can't throw other stuff in for that $1,200. So I'm going to throw in a tripod, and I'm going to throw in some kind of flash, like flash, and I'm going to put in a whole pile of SD cards or whatever. And so the competition in the digital camera market is totally different. It's not price; it is bundle. And so this guy's internship was every day come in and see on this set of products what our competitors are bundling. So it's like click, 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 same as yesterday. Click, 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 same as yesterday. Click, 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 same as yesterday. This is his internship. And I said, oh, you're kidding me. He said by Wednesday, he started Monday, by Wednesday, he was ready to commit suicide. It was just mind-numbing. In fact, why do companies hire interns in the first place anyway? Yeah, it's to do the work that no human wants to do. And so, that was it. Now, it seems like strange we're going to, pay a human to do this. I mean, there's payroll, taxes, and everything involved. Well, it turns out that their division, I don't know what division, I don't know if there is like a digital camera division, but that's whatever division it was. They said, you know what, we want to get IT to do this for us. IT came and they sent someone over and looked at what they're trying to do. And they said, great, we'll do this for you. It's going to cost. It kind of seems strange to say a company's going to charge itself. But it turns out my department pays like $11 a month to BYU for the phone that I have in my office. It's kind of strange, that's the way it is. And the way it is, at most companies, one division, charges another one, budget money gets moved from one to the other. They said, we can do this for you. It will take a year to build it out, and it'll cost you $100,000. And what they do? They hired an intern. Intern's a lot less. And you don't have to wait a year. Some benefits here. And so this student, he was like, by Friday, I got to find something out. And so he said, right, Friday, as soon as I got home, I started to work out, a VBA program to do this. I worked till late in the night Friday. I got up early morning, so I worked all day Saturday. He had a little confession. He said, I didn't even go to church on Sunday. I worked right through on Sunday. I said, don't tell me, tell your bishop. And he said, but by Monday morning, I had it working. Now, when it's working, by the way, it doesn't work perfectly. It runs, and there's things you didn't anticipate, and so you have to tweak it. But he's already way more productive than he was when he was doing it by hand. Now, do you think you could keep this secret? That'd be pretty good, if you could just keep it secret, and you could just sit back and, I don't know, watch Netflix while your computer is running and doing this stuff. But, he's pretty proud of it, so he kind of shows it off to his boss. And his boss is like, you wrote this over the weekend? Well, yeah, it's just VBA sub-procedure. It's not a big deal. And so the boss is like, oh my gosh, this guy's great. And so he actually spent his internship like doing VBA for like other things. They're like, hey, how about this? Could you do this? Hey, how about this? Could you do this? Which would you rather do? Yeah, the second. Oh, you'd rather click. Click, 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 click. Anyway, did he get a full-time offer? Yeah, he did. But when I talked to him about this, he said, I don't think I'm going to take it. I thought, oh, okay. But I told the story about a year later, and a buddy of his was in the class and went, oh, yeah, he ended up taking it. And he was having a great time out there. So, yeah, what I'm about to show you today, does it really still happen? Yeah, this totally still happens. And so this is a really valuable skill. I had another student, I probably shouldn't tell all these stories. Actually, this guy wasn't even a student. He was someone who heard about VBA. Anyway, he got hired to do an internship at BYU. It's like over the summer internship, they had to convert a bunch of files they had this really complex file structure. They had to go find them all and move them to this new place. And he said, Professor John, do you think you could help me, do this in VBA? And if it was a former student, I wouldn't even thought about it. Yeah, glad to help you. He wasn't even a former student. I said, well, you know, we're having the Colonial Heritage Festival. We need help setting up. If you'll come help set up, I'll help you with this. Well, we spent 3 hours or so, and we wrote it out. And so, you know, we took it in, and he did his whole internship the next afternoon. And they were all, well, hey, thanks for doing this, but that's why we hired you, so you're fired. So, you're kidding me. He's telling me this while he's helping me set up for the Colonial Heritage Festival. And I thought, you are absolutely kidding me. I just wanted to wring those guys' necks. I mean, if nothing else, give him something else to do and still pay him. That was rude. Anyway, so be careful. You know, you might end up working yourself out of a job. So maybe sitting back with Netflix and, you know, just push the button every once in a while to run it. I don't know. Okay, so our goal then is to be able to pull this information. Now let's suppose that that was your, you know, they just gave this to you. Go get this data. What are you going to do? Well, you're probably going to go to finance.yahoo.com. Finance.yahoo.com. There we go. I still didn't get there. And over here, there's a quote lookup. I'm going to put in Southwest Airlines. And is it brought up Southwest Airlines? Did I get it wrong? This looks pretty good, but I'm not seeing. Oh, it just took a while to get here. Okay. So here it is, Southwest Airlines. Currently trading. Good news. PE ratio is here. Earnings per share is right here. That's what we're after. You know, what would you do? You'd be like copy, paste, next ticker. Copy, paste, next ticker. And so what's the real problem with that? It's going to take a long time, but you know, that's okay because they hired you to do it. It's going to be mind numbing. That's okay. You're an intern. You know, you're supposed to have your mind numbed from time to time. But what's the real problem? So neither of those two things are the big problem. What's the big problem with this? Yeah. You know, because it's mind numbing, you know, your mind, where's your mind going to be? Anywhere else but here. And so your mind really won't be on the task and you'll copy the wrong thing and that'll be bad. So, but here's the good news. The good news is that right here inside of Excel, you know, we've got like a little information slave. If you think about the VBA interpreter, right? The one that looks at VBA and actually makes the computer do what it says to do. You got to think about this. Since 1995, this guy is now 25 years old. Yeah, like 25 years old. Been in every single copy of Excel that's sold. Well, not true now because like the iPad version doesn't have it, the online version doesn't have it, but the online version's free. I don't know. Anyway, and every day someone opens up Excel, and the macro interpreter goes. I mean, the VBA interpreter goes. Maybe today's the day they're going to use me, and I'm ready to go all day long, and the whole day, end of the day. They close off the Excel and didn't get used. And what does the interpreter say? Maybe tomorrow will be the day. And so it's just depressed the whole time. And then you come along and you give it a job that you think is just terribly boring. You wouldn't want to do this. But the interpreter is so thrilled to have something to do that it's like, I will do this happily. And I will do this over and over and over again. It's something to do. And so that's where we don't have to feel bad about giving the interpreter a bad task because the interpreter is really happy to do it. Okay, so let's take a look. Listen to that. Okay, so this is where we're going to pull the data. Now we're going to do one more thing, and that is I'm going to make another tab here before we start recording anything. And this one I'm going to call web query. So I don't want to record myself making a web query because if that was the case, every time I ran the macro, it would make a new web query. Instead, I want to have a web query existing, and I want to record myself editing it. So I want to have one web query here, and then I'm going to tell it, go to a different URL, and then run. Go to a different URL, and then run. Okay, so I'm going to start myself on A2 instead of A1. I've got something else in mind for A1. We'll get to that in just a bit. But I want to put a web query right here. Now, it turns out that if I choose data from web, this will open up the web query wizard. This web query wizard was written, well, I don't know, it was released in 2017. And the web query wizard before this was a little bit simpler, but it didn't deal with static content really well. It was probably written in the early 2000s. And Back then, web pages were mostly static. You went to a web page, it was just text that rendered, into look like something. It wasn't, here's some JavaScript that will go and pull information from a bunch of other places and have ads that update and change. And so the old web query wizard didn't do so well with dynamic content. This one does great with dynamic content, but the way it records it's not nearly as nice what it records. And so after we have a little more road under our feet, we could come and do the same thing with this web query wizard that we're going to do with the old one today, but we're going to be a lot happier with the older one today. The only thing that's really a problem with the older one is it kind of has errors on when there's dynamic content. Now, it doesn't have errors getting the data from dynamic content. It has errors building the query. So if we can get the query built, it'll run great. So that's the good news. So I'm going to cancel this. I'm not going to use this web query wizard. And in fact, the web query wizard, the way to get to it, the legacy one, is you come to tell me what you want to do. And here you type web. And you should see from web legacy. From web is the one we just opened. From web legacy is the other one. Now it's going to open up a little browser right here in Excel. It really is a little internet browser. That's nice. If all your other browsers break one day, you could come and open up this one in Excel and you could go. It turns out it's not a very good browser, but it's a browser. And so, in fact, it'll probably, depending on what your home page is set for in Internet Explorer, if you even know, it's probably the default, it may put up an error that says, do you want to keep running scripts on this page? Just say no, no, no. Don't, it'll keep running them anyway, but just tell it no. And then we're going to put in, and it doesn't really matter where the web query is because we're going to change it. Right? We're going to actually change it. So let's put in a simple page. So we're going to put in my home page, gov.net, gove.net. And then we'll say go. And that should take me to my home page that I made when I was applying for the job here at BYU like 15 years ago. I haven't updated it since. If I ever apply for another job, I'll probably update it again. So, and it turns out there's like these little arrows here that say, you know what, you don't have to bring in the whole page. Or like parts of this page you can bring in, forget about that. We're just going to bring in the whole page, and we'll do that by not selecting any of those arrows. So we'll say import. Where do you want to put it? Oh, somehow I got over here to T22. I want to put that in A2. And we'll say OK. And it should bring that data in. Now, this is a static page. So having this as a web query is not important. But remember, we're going to be changing the URL through code. So, but the idea here really is a query. It's not an import. It's a query. We can tell this query to refresh. This query has a method called refresh. And we can call it, and it would say, oh, go back to that page, and whatever has changed, you bring it down here again so we can get the new stuff. OK. So now I think we're set up. We're ready to record. We're going to record ourselves editing this query. So we got the query in place. So I'm going to come back to my tickers sheet. Now remember, we talked about this last time we recorded a query, but there's always two things that we want to think about when we set out to record. We want to know the answer to two questions before we start. Remember what those are? Yeah, where should we start? Where do we want the user to have the active cell when they run this macro? And that's where we should be when we start. And when the macro is done running, where should it leave off? Where should the active cell end up? And we'll make sure that that's where we end up when we're recording. OK, so we've thought about those two things. Oh, actually, we haven't answered them yet, though. Where do you think we should start? Now, we're going to record ourselves getting the information for one ticker. So where do you think we should start? What? OK, so A2, I heard B2. B2 is not such a bad one. I mean, that's where we're going to put the first data. But I like A2 better than B2 because this has, they have signaled this is the ticker that we want the data for. But A2 is one of 9 cells here that I am equally happy to start on. Like, where else might we start? Yeah, any of their tickers. Doesn't really matter because we're just getting for one. Nothing special about A2. I mean, it's the top of the list, but anyone will do. I'll be here on Apple. That's fine. Now, so that's where I'm going to start. Now, where should I end up? When this thing is done running, where should the active cell be? OK, we could go to A1. I'm not really thrilled with A1. So is there other options? A3. Now, remember, we're only getting the information for one ticker. We're just getting it for one. So C4, this is a possibility. This is not so bad because it kind of shows where we ended off. still not my favorite. A4 is so close. A5 is the one I love. And the reason is this just gets me ready for the next run. Right? So if I've got a hotkey on this, I can press it, get it once, and then I don't have to click or move it. I can just press it again, press it again, press it again. If there's a lot of them, my pinky might get tired from all the pressing control, whatever I'm doing. But okay, so I'm going to start here on A4. I'm going to end up on A5. I think I'm ready to go. So I'm going to come to my developer tab, and I'm going to say record macro. Now remember, I said once you start recording this macro, you got to be careful because it's recording everything that you do. Let's go ahead and give it a name. I'm going to call it symbol data. Symbol. What's it called? A ticker symbol. It's the identifier for a stock. Symbol data. Symbol data shortcut key. Oh, Control S. That should be good. Oh wait, what's Control S? Yeah, we don't use that one, so I'll put Control Shift S. That'll put a capital S, which will make it Control Shift S. I'll save it in this workbook, and I'll just say data from Yahoo. And I will say, okay, I'm recording now. So we're going to be looking at all these steps. So let's just kind of think about what we're doing. Step 1 is going to be to copy. I'll press Control C, and I've just copied whatever the active ticker was that the user had selected. Now so it should record that. We'll take a look at it. I'm going to come to the web query page, and it should record. Go to the web query page. Now, I'm over here on T22. How did I get there again? I'm not sure. But I'm going to come back over here, and I'm going to select A1. If you're already on A1, click off of it and come back. And here I'm going to paste. I'll press Enter to paste. Control V would be just fine as well. And so I've now put this ticker in the right place. Now, the whole reason I copied it and brought it over here was because I wanted to know right where the ticker is that I'm working on. We'll see why here in just a bit. Now let's record ourselves editing the query. So I have to edit this query, I've got to select some cell that's a result of the query. So I'll select A2, and I will right click and choose Edit Query. And it should bring that query back up. Now, you'll remember that I told you whatever you do now is being recorded. That's not entirely true. Anytime you get to a dialog box, the macro recorder says, oh, a dialog box. I can see you need a little personal time here. I'll avert my eyes. And it doesn't pay attention to what you're doing in the dialog box. It's not recording the steps that you do in the dialog box. What it does, once you press OK, or in this case, import, it says, let me just take a look and see how you configured this, and we'll record that configuration. So even though it might be tempting to say, well, I've got the ticker symbol on the clipboard, let me come up here and maybe put it somehow in the URL to get it, it wouldn't record that. It would just record, it wouldn't record me changing the URL, it would just record the new URL. And so we don't really get any benefit from that. And since this web query wizard kind of struggles with dynamic content, you know what? I'm not even gonna go anywhere. Well, we're gonna have to change that URL ourselves in code, but let's just say import. What we just did was we recorded the code that we need to be able to edit the query. Now we're going to give us the definition for how that query is assigned. Now our next step is going to be to find the data that we're trying to copy and copy it, but we can't do that yet because our web query isn't pointing to the right place. So I'm going to stop recording. I haven't finished the whole thing. I'll hit stop. Oops. Oh, this mouse kind of double clicks when it's not really needing to. So I've just stopped recording. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we've done so far, shall we? So to go look at the code on the developer tab, I'm going to come to my list of macros. I'll open up the list. There's only one called symbol data, and I will choose edit. And this should open up the Visual Basic environment and take me right to this macro that I recorded. You'll remember that macro starts with sub and it ends with a keyword end sub. All the statements between it are the set of macros, data statements that we're writing for this macro. Here's the name, symbol data. Everything that starts with a single quote is just a comment. And so here's our very first line that we recorded, selection.copy. What was the first thing we did? We copied the active cell. Whatever was selected, we copied it. So we have object, figures out whatever is selected, dot, what do you think? Method or property? Yeah, method, it does an instruction all by itself. We copied that, then we selected the next sheet. So sheets, and then in parentheses, the name of the sheet. That identifies an object, identifies a particular worksheet, and then we are running a method. And we're telling that sheet, select yourself. We're then telling range A1, select yourself. Make yourself active. Now wait a minute, how many range A1s do I have on this workbook? 2. I got 2 worksheets, they each have an A1. How does it know which one? If I don't tell it which sheet, it assumes the active sheet. Am I certain about which sheet is active at this point? Yeah, I just selected a sheet. We're talking about A1 on the web query sheet. And then active sheet paste. So that was me hitting enter. And then this is the first one that's a little bit weird. Application.cut copy mode equals false. Now you're familiar with cut copy mode. You may not realize it, but if you press Control C, you've put Excel into a different mode. In fact, somewhere it says, down here it says select destination and press enter. That's lets you know it's cut copy mode. But what's different? I don't know a whole lot about what's different, but what's different here? How does Excel behave differently when you're in cut copy mode? There's one big difference. Yeah, enter pastes. Normally enter commits a change to a cell or just moves you down. But now it's different. So when I hit enter, in fact, when you hit enter, it comes out of cut copy mode. If you press Control V, it stays in cut copy mode. So because I hit enter, the next thing is cut copy mode equals false. For the application, Excel has a property called cut copy mode, and we just came out of cut copy mode. The truth is, we don't need this. We could get rid of it, and the fact that we did something else is going to take us out of cut copy mode, but it records it anyway. I'll leave it in place. How many of you have something actually have the range A2 next? Like these 2 lines are reversed. So quite a few of you. And the reason is you're used to pasting with Control V. And when you paste with Control V, it doesn't take you out of cut copy mode. So it wasn't until you went to edit the query table that Excel went, oh yeah, you can't be in cut copy mode. We'll take you out of cut copy mode. So the order is a little bit different kind of depending on how you get it, but that's okay. And the truth is, it doesn't really matter where this happens or if it happens at all, we'll be all right. So now we have the with structure. Remember, this is just shorthand. It says identify some object here, all the way to wherever the end with is. And then if you see a dot at the beginning of an expression in here, just pretend that this is in front of it. So what we're saying is with the query table that's behind the selection, we're going to change the connection. And it's going to be equal to this. Now, because this starts off with URL, that's how we know this is a web query. Other kinds of queries, they don't start with URL. If it's a web query, it starts with URL. And then we've got this one that we're after. So, I mean, that's the URL we want to put in there. So let's go ahead and just go get the URL. And the truth is, you could type this just as fast, but I want to take a quick look at this URL. And let me open up Notepad. Oops. That's not any better. Format, font. Oh wait, I think I can zoom in on Notepad now. There we go. Okay, do you know how this URL works? My guess is most of you don't know what the different parts of this are. First part up here to the // that's the protocol. It's instructions that says this is the rules that the browser and the server are going to follow while they communicate. It's a certain set of rules to have about communication. Everything to the next / is identifying the computer. It's the host. This gets me to a computer. Everything to the question mark gets me to a resource on that computer. It gets me to a script or a program or a file to have on that computer. The question mark is the beginning of parameters. So we're saying, listen, this resource that we've identified here, it needs to know some information about how to operate. It says we have a variable called P, and its value is going to be love. We have a variable called .tsrc, and its value is going to be finsearch v1. Well, the thing that you should always be, kind of willing to do is kind of fiddle with this and see what happens. The fact that it says love here and love here makes me think maybe that's redundant. I'm just curious to see what happens if I just take that part right there. Does it really need the parameter? I'm going to plug it in here and see. Now, if that takes me back to Southwest Airlines, I'm thinking that's enough. I don't need to completely change that. That's going to be enough. I remember when I very first started doing web scraping, it was 1998 or so. I was a student at the University of Minnesota. And back in the day, the internet was not so reliable. It would go down a couple times a day. Usually not for long. There'd be some problem. I would do something, and then the internet would be off. Oh my gosh, did I break the internet? That's what I would think. You can't break the internet doing this. You just might get a page that doesn't make any sense or doesn't. But anyway, so that's great. That's just going to make this URL a little bit simpler for me to work with. So I'm going to come back to my code. I'm going to replace gov.net, and I'm going to paste in that one. So, you know, if the web query wizard was a little more capable, we would have gone there in the first place, but it ends up having lots of errors that you have to dismiss, and eventually you can get through it. So this is going to be a little bit better for us. Now, this line right here, this is that one I mentioned that got introduced in 2013. I have no idea what they're trying to accomplish with it, but it will just cause an error. If we try to run this, it'll get to this and say, I have no idea what you're talking about. So it's like the macro recorder and the VBA interpreter aren't always on speaking terms with each other. So the recorder recorded something that didn't make any sense to the interpreter. That's okay. There's probably an intern working there that did this. And must have, I don't know how it could have possibly gotten through Microsoft's extensive quality assurance program, but I'm just going to comment that line out. I could delete it, but you know, typically when I'm thinking, I'm not quite sure what that is, but so I'm going to disable it, but leave it in place in case I want to bring it back later. Okay, so that's enough. In fact, let me just give it a shot. I'm going to come back to, where's my code? Oh, here we go. I'm going to come back to my tickers. So right now, the data that it's bringing in is, you know, the sparse text on my home page. But I'm going to come here now, and I'm going to run it here on Google. Control-Shift-S. We can see it's put Google here in A1. We're kind of waiting for that web server to send the information back. And when it does, it should leave us off right where we ended, which was right here. But now we actually have, yeah, we're seeing finance, sports, entertainment. This is the page back from finance.yahoo.com. And the information I'm interested in is right here. PE ratio and earnings per share. Just going to put those over here so I don't have to type them again. Now, I'm on line 84 and 85. Is anyone on a different line? Yeah, what line are you on? 35 and 36. So the truth is, with pages today, you know, each time they load, they could be all kinds of different data on them. And the Mac or the web query wizard just says, hey, bring all that text and drop it in here. In simple pages, sometimes, you know, it's all the data you're looking for is always in the same cell. That's great. In this case, it's going to be moving around, but it's probably always going to be relative to these labels. And so what we're going to do is we're going to search for these labels, and then we're going to move over relatively and pull that value to get it. I think we're ready to do it. Now, where did we leave off in our macro recording excursion? I think we were on A2. I think we're on A2. So I'm going to go back to A2, and I'm going to start recording again. Now, it used to be there was a kind of a complex way where you could say, I want to record steps into an existing macro. That's gone from VBA. But it's really almost as good what we're going to do here. I'm just going to start recording again. So record macro. No shortcut key because I'm going to just use this to get the statements and we'll merge them together. I don't even need a description. Macro 2 is a great name. In fact, I'll say OK. So now I got to find the data that I'm interested in. So press Control F. Actually, before I press Control F, I'm going to come over here and get my PE ratio. If you didn't copy it, that's OK. You can type this in, but we just want to make sure that it's just exactly that way, case and all. We'll press Control F. I'll look for that, and I'll say Find Next. Actually, before I say Find Next, I'm going to click on Options, and I'm going to do a couple here. I'm going to put Match Case and Match Entire Cell Contents. What I don't want to have happen is have something on this page earlier where we've got some pundit talking about the price-earnings ratio. And if there's some text in there that has this, I don't want to find it as part of a cell. I'm going to assume that we found it in the right place. So I want it to be as specific as possible. So case is going to be exactly the same. Match the entire contents of the cell. P, capital PE, space, capital R, lowercase HEO, and all exactly the same. So now I'll say Find Next, and it has found it. Now, you might be tempted to now click on B84. Don't do it. If I click on B84 or the next cell over, what's it going to record? What will the macro recorder record? Yeah, select B84. I don't want that. You might be tempted to think, well, maybe if I hit the right arrow, that'll mean move to the right. No, that'll also say select B84. So just like you're familiar with writing formulas in Excel, there's this notion of absolute versus relative reference. There's the same thing in recording macros. By default, you're recording with absolute references. You go to a cell and it records that cell. Here, I'm now going to say, no, I want to use relative references. You see it right here? Use relative references. I'm going to click on that, And you can turn this on and off while you're recording, that's okay. Use relative references, you can kind of see it stays highlighted. And now when I click on B84, it's gonna record move 1 to the right of the active cell. Great, we record ourselves finding it, and now we're moving 1 to the right of the active cell. I'm gonna copy it, Control C. I'll go back to my tickers page. I'm still on relative references, so I'll go over to the right one. I'll paste that. Back to my web query sheet. Now, I could search for EPS here, but you know what? I bet it's the next cell down. I don't see them putting in something new in the middle there, so I'm going to come here. When we got a little more sophisticated, what we might do is we might check and make sure that does say EPS. So let's look at this one, make sure it's EPS, and we'll know we're getting the right stuff. But for now, we're just starting. I'm going to select that one. I'll copy it. I'll go back. I'm after now my EPS data, and I'm done, almost. What's next? Yep, got to come back to A4. So I'm going to go select where I want the thing to end off and stop recording. So now I should be able to run that. I'm on Apple, Control, Shift, S. Now you can see we're getting the information from Apple. We've put Apple right there in A1. It should pull that data in and then bring it back to row A5. Oh, I have not yet merged these two together. All right, it's only doing the first one. So I think we have gotten some results in here. It looks pretty good. Let's go and merge that code together. So I'm just going to use Alt-Tab to go back to my Visual Basic editor. And you can see right here is where our kind of web query finishes. Oh, I wanted to point this out. We're changing a bunch of properties, changing the connection. The rest of these we didn't change, but it doesn't really know what we changed. It just says this is the way it's configured. And then this one's the refresh. This one that tells the query to go get the data again. And we're giving it a parameter here of a background query. We're saying not a background query. If it was a background query, we'd tell it to run and our code would keep going while the query runs in the background. Here we're saying, no, background query is false. So wait, don't run on, wait here. That's what we want. We want to wait till that page gets here, and then we'll go and get our data. And then here is the end of that sub-procedure, and here's our next one that we recorded. Well, if we don't end this one, and we don't start this one, then the start of the old one will be the start of the whole thing, and the end of the new one will be the end of the whole thing. I've just put these together into one. Okay, so after it gets the data, it should come through here and do the find. It should then offset to get the cell that we're interested in and do all that pasting. And I'm going to go ahead and run that now one more time just so we can see it work. So here's Apple, Control-Shift-S. We'll let that run. The question while that's coming in, go ahead. Ah, that's right. We haven't made it, and we're going to see that here in just a second. Because what our data is going to show is that Google's trading at $2, or is a PE ratio is $2.12. Apple's is the same. What's the likelihood of that being true? So minuscule that, you know, we look at it and say there must be an error in our code. And you've identified what the error is. We haven't done anything to actually make the URL dynamic. So let's come and do that right now. So here we look at the connection, and it says the URL is right here. Everything is the same except for our ticker symbol. Well, that's the whole reason we put the ticker symbol into A1, right? We want it to be looking for whatever cell we put into A1. What's it looking for now? What's the computer looking for? It's looking for love. Poor fellow. So I'm going to delete the love. That's a sad thing all by itself. And now I'm just going to concatenate on to that. Where did we put it? Where did we paste? Range A1. And I want the value of that object. Now, so here's a little thing we haven't talked about yet, and that is we use these double quotes to tell something very specific to VBA. Like when we look at this here, selection, this word selection here, we're telling VBA, figure out what's currently selected. VBA looks at that word selection, I gotta figure this out. What is this? And I go, oh yeah, I remember that, selection, it's what's selected. It goes and finds out what does something. When we want to tell VBA, hey, slow down. This is not for you to understand. Just hold these values. We're going to give these values to somebody else to understand. We put them in double quotes. Double quotes says to VBA, hey, this is just a bunch of characters you got to keep track of. Don't try to understand them. They don't mean anything to you. By the way, who does this make sense to? we have that little web browser that's built into the web query. The web query is an object that knows what to do with this. VBA goes, oh, I wouldn't know what that is. Actually, the same thing here. VBA isn't trying to figure out what A1 is. VBA is just saying, oh, I'm going to keep that value, and I'm going to give that to the range object. The range object, or the range method, knows what to do with that. Inside double quotes, VBA just goes, hey, I'm not trying to understand it. I'm just trying to keep track of it. So it has to figure out what range means. And so it goes, oh yeah, object, I get it. We're calling the method of an object. We pass it that value, and that value then comes back here. So now whatever we put in A1 is going to just get glued onto the end of this string. Now we should be pulling in the right information. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the one from Apple, and I'll run that on Apple again, Control-Shift-S. And that should now bring in the real information from Apple. There's a question while it's coming in. Go ahead. Well, the question is, do we want to say active cell value? And the answer is no. We can see that it's brought in some other information. Let's go look at why. What is the active cell when this runs? By the time this statement gets executed, what is the active cell? It's A2. And yeah, so if somehow we could set it up so that this just stayed active over here, and we could if we're writing this from scratch, but for recording it, we don't have that luxury. And so that's the whole reason that we pasted it into A1 over here, was so that we would know that it was in A1, so that we could know exactly where to get it here. So now it's going to wait for that information. It's going to go through all the, and you can look through these, and we don't have really time to go over these. I've got one more kind of big thing to talk about. We can see that it brings that information in. Okay, so now the only thing we've got to do is say, listen, we don't want to do it just once. I mean, I'm not even saving much time if I got to press Control-Shift-S each time to run it. What do I want to do? I want to set this thing to run. I want to get a ham sandwich. And I want Excel to send me a text message when it's done, so I can know it's time to come back and get to work. Can I make Excel send me a text message? Oh, yeah. Am I going to show you how to do that in this class? Oh, yeah. I'll show you how to do that. Turns out it's not that difficult. So it turns out you cannot record anything that says do this action over and over and over again. So we got to write that from scratch. In programming lingo, that's called a loop. That's pretty simple. Let's take a look. Now I could kind of build the loop inside of this sub procedure here, but this one's pretty useful by itself. It just gets the information for one ticker. That's a functionality I'd still like to have around. So instead of putting a loop to tell internally this one to do different, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make another sub procedure called get all data. So get all data, well, let's do this. We're going to want to make sure that we're on the right sheet. Now, symbol data assumes that the way you're communicating with me is you're selecting the cell you want to get the data from. But get all data, we want to go to a specific sheet. So I'm just going to say, hey, go to the ticker sheet. And on that sheet, I want to select a particular cell, range A2, start at A2. And now I want to call symbol data. So at this point, here's what I'm saying. I'm saying, all right, when I run this get all data, make sure I got the right sheet selected, go to the top of the list, and now just run symbol data. Let's say call that sub procedure. That'll do it once. Now I got to put the loop in. It tells it to go over and over again. Here's how to do it in VBA. It's really simple. I'm going to come in here and use the keyword do. Do doesn't do anything. It just says it's a mark. I am the beginning of a loop. Okay? And then I can have any number of statements I want in here. I can have, lots of them. I only want one. And then I will say loop. And loop just says, go back to the prior do. And so we would go once to tickers, we'd go to A2, and then we would call symbol data. And then when that's done, it would come down here, bing, 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 run all this. When it's done, it would come right back here and say, okay, what's next? Next is loop. Great. Loop goes back to the do, and it goes, oh, call symbol data. Bing, 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 bing. When it's done, it goes loop. Oh, go back to the top. Call symbol data. Bing, 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 bing. How long is this going to execute? Well, forever is a long, long time. It's not going to go forever. I mean, it's going to go until something weird happens. It's going to go until the second coming. It's going to go until nuclear holocaust. It'll go until someone pulls the power cord out of this computer. Until something unexpected happens. Now, in this case, symbol data goes down a row every time. And so since it takes 2 or 3 seconds to run, after about 6 months, we will have gone down 1.04 million times, and we would try to go one past the end, and that would be an error, and that would stop it. So that'll probably happen before the second coming, I'm guessing. But there's been some talk about April conference, about what it might be. Anyway, so I got to give it some way to get out. So I'm going to say do until something is true. Wait, do I need the until, or would it work without it? It would work without it. The endless loop is okay. It's valid syntax. Do until active cell dot value equals something, like maybe stop. S-T-O-P. In which case, now we think about what's happening here. We're going to be moving down. Each time we run it, we move down. We move down. We move down. So I can come here and put stop. And now when we get to this one, we'll come up to the top, do until active cell equals value equals stop. It'll go, oh, the active cell value is stop. That gets me out of the loop. The trouble is, I'm not sure, but what stop might be a valid ticker symbol. Somebody might want to get it. So I better put stow, which could be a valid ticker symbol. So I'll put st, which could be a valid ticker symbol. So I'll put s, which could be a valid ticker symbol. So I'll put that. It's a really strange way to say it. But what that is, it is a collection of characters. How many characters? No characters. Is it possible to have a string variable with no characters? Yeah, we talked about it. We allocate a string, and it gives us 4 bytes. Tells how long it is. How long is it? 0. That's what it is. That's what that is. And that's what a blank cell is. So this now will execute until we hit a blank cell. So now I should be able to run this. I'll come over here. I'll clear these out. And I will choose my list of macros, get all data, which should run the whole thing. You'll notice I don't have one of my symbols selected yet. I'll say run. And that should go through and get the data. Unfortunately, we don't really see what's going on. This is Excel's attempt at trying to make it a little bit more efficient by not updating the screen. We'll learn some code that we can tell it, hey, go ahead and update the screen now and then turn the screen updating off so we can kind of see it come in a little bit better. But today what we're trying to do is just record a complex process and then go and see what modifications we might need to make to it. If you can possibly walk away from this example before it's finished, I'm done talking. But if you want to stick around and actually see that it really worked, it'll probably take another 30 seconds or so, maybe a minute before it's done. So that's it. Class dismissed. There we go. We got the whole table filled out. Exciting.